One remote to control them all. Hey guys, and welcome back to another random distractions video. In one of my previous ones I had mentioned that we recently changed over to an LG C1 from the Sony AAG that we used to have. And one of the things that I've been wanting to try is to use the eARC option on the Sony had it, and also the LG has it, and I know the Anthem supports it, but I had never tried it before, so I wanted to give that a shot. I usually use the Xbox when I'm ready to watch something, and that's mainly because the LED lights that are behind the TV are controlled by the Raspberry Pi, which is connected through HDMI and the Xbox. And so it just kind of adds to the experience, and that's the way that I would rather watch movies and stuff. And not to mention that it's our Blu-ray player if we need to watch something like that. However, most of the time if my wife is out there and she wants to watch something, or I'm out there with her, she just wants to turn on the TV and start watching. And so not having to turn on the Raspberry Pi and then turning on the Xbox and needing to log in and all that would save us time if we could just use the TV by itself. So first I want to show you guys what it looks like on the back of the TV. Alright, so here we are behind the TV, and I'll go through first the setup of the TV itself. So it's currently connected to HDMI 2, which is the eARC port on the TV. And as you can see, it goes down here and it gets connected into the Anthem. And I'm trying to remember, I think it's HDMI out number 1 is where that's currently connected. And as you can see, HDMI out 2 is also connected, and I'll show where that is, but that's actually for the Xbox. And so the Xbox is connected into HDMI 1, which is actually through back here. And then it's connected to the Anthem down there. But for HDMI out 2, that comes out and is connected to this splitter here. And what this does is it connects to the Raspberry Pi that's down here, which in turn controls the LED lights that are back here. And then that splitter goes to the Raspberry Pi, and then it comes over to HDMI port number 1. Alright, now with everything hooked up, here are the settings on the Anthem. I did this from the web GUI, but the first thing that you want to do is to make sure that HDMI CE settings are turned on. This is found under General and CEC settings. The ones I turned on are CEC Control and CEC Power Off Control. Then, to make sure that my wife doesn't have to worry about switching inputs on the Anthem, I made sure that the default input when it turns on was the LG one. This can be found under Main Zone. Under Power On Input, I selected the LG 5.2.2 input. And now for the TV settings. Under the All Settings menu, select General, then Devices. Then under HDMI settings, make sure that SimpLink is turned on. Then if you back up to Sound, and then Sound Out, select Use Wired Speaker, and make sure that you select HDMI ARC device. And because I also want to use my Xbox to turn on the receiver, here are the settings for the Xbox. For the Xbox, pull up the Settings menu, go to General, then TV and Display Options, then Device Control. After you've set up the correct TV and audio receiver, you then go to Device Power Options and make sure that when Xbox turns on, that it sends an on signal to the TV and receiver, and when it turns off, to send a turn off signal to the TV and receiver. Does it work? For the most part, it does. When I turn on the TV, the receiver will turn on, and when I turn off the TV, the receiver will turn off. I can adjust the volume with the LG remote, and I can see on the TV itself the plus and minus sign showing up, and since the receiver is in front of us, I can see that it is actually working. However, the Anthem GUI display, that the little gray box that would appear in the front of the TV, does not show up. For the Xbox, when I turn that on, everything turns on, well, almost everything. I have to turn on the Raspberry Pi in order for the LED lights to start working, and I do have to switch on the Anthem from the LG input to the Xbox input for the sound. I do have an Amazon Echo device, so what I'll probably do is I'll set up a routine that will automatically turn on the Xbox, which will turn the TV and the receiver on, and also turn on the Raspberry Pi at the same time to at least, you know, reduce the amount of things that I need to do. Then I'll just need to switch over the input and should be ready to go. The Echo device can already turn on the Xbox, so adding the Pi shouldn't be too big of an issue. And of course, when I turn off the Xbox, the receiver and the TV turn off. However, unlike using just the TV by itself, when I use the LG remote to turn the volume up and down, it not only shows on the TV the little plus and minus sign, but the Anthem GUI also shows up. While working on this video, I had actually received a comment from somebody named Paul who was wondering about CEC control, although he is using an Apple TV, and which I don't have, unfortunately, but I'm guessing it would be similar to me using the Xbox. And if that's the only thing that you use, then I would probably suggest, you know, making the default input whenever it turns on to be the Apple TV. That way you don't have to worry about making the switch. I know that if I only use the Xbox, that's probably what I would do, is to have it set up to only show up the Xbox input on the Anthem itself. Are there any issues? Well, while setting this up, I did figure something out. In order for the receiver to turn on with the TV, I do have to make sure that the TV input is set to HDMI 2, which is where the eARC port is set up, and that's how it's connected to the receiver. However, I was kind of worried about that because if I was watching the Xbox, I would switch it over to the HDMI 1, which was the Xbox input. But what I realized is that even if I leave it on HDMI 2, which is the eARC option, eventually the signal to the Xbox would show up. It was usually only like maybe a second or two delay before it would show up, and then everything seemed to be working fine. So I was actually able to leave it on HDMI 2 so that the receiver would always turn on, and then my wife wouldn't have to worry about remembering to switch anything. She would just have to turn on the TV and everything would work. And then the only other thing that my wife and I noticed, and actually my wife noticed this more than I did, is she would be watching a show, and the way that I have the Anthem set up is that when it turns on, in addition to the LG input being the default volume is set to -50. And this is usually, a pretty good sound level for just casual, TV watching or whatever. And that's what she would, leave it at. But after a few minutes, the Anthem would just shut off. And every now and then, actually, she told me that it would turn back on. I tried to replicate this, in a couple of different scenarios, and the only thing I can think of that was causing this issue was that maybe certain apps are not loud enough, or shows maybe not be loud enough, and the Anthem had a setting of after no signal, it would turn off after 20 minutes. And so in order to avoid that, or possibly help with that, I went ahead and turned that off. If you need to do the same, that is actually under General and then Display. By doing this, I figured that when we turn off the TV or the Xbox, it should turn off the receiver anyway. So I'd rather have it stay on and not randomly turn off. So far, we've tried it for maybe a day or two now, and it hasn't done it since. So hopefully that was a solution. Overall, I'm really happy with the way the CEC settings have been working. I know in the Anthem Facebook group that I joined, I had seen a couple of comments of sometimes being a little quirky, but so far from my experience, I did learn a couple of things that I had to do in order for it to make sure that it was working right. But yeah, so far it seems to be working well. So hopefully, if you try it with your Anthem device, you will have the same luck. And before I leave, I wanted to mention again about the LED lights that I had mentioned in the previous video as well. I did go ahead and switch out the HDMI cables, and it actually seemed to be working. But after a couple of days, it started doing the rainbow effect again and glitching out and just not working right. But when I was hooking everything up, I noticed this. All right, so I'm not sure if this is part of what the problem is with the LED lights, but I noticed that when I try to stick this thing back on, it'll turn on every now and then. So I don't know if maybe that's part of what's causing the problem, but I may try to redo that section and see if that fixes it. Since then though, after I put everything back in its place, it seems to be working again. So I don't know if maybe if it was just a little bit glitchy when I was touching the lights back there, and then it got fixed. Although I may still, look at trying to redo that so that it doesn't do that. But so far it seems to be working again, but I'll keep an eye on it. All right, well, that's all I have for this video. Thank you for joining me for this one. I would definitely appreciate a like, of course, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next one drops. If you have any, additional comments that you want to chime in below for people that may be connecting their devices together with the Anthem and maybe are having issues, make sure to leave them in the comment. Or if you have any questions of stuff that's happening, leave that in the comments, and maybe myself or somebody else might be able to help you out. But until then, I hope you have a good one.